I thought my girlfriend loved me. Until the night I opened the basement door, she forbade me from touching. I heard whispers my name repeated over and over. What I found wasn't just a secret, it was her plan for me. And trust me, karma didn't wait long to strike back. Raylan urges viewers to like, share, and subscribe because the story is real, it's terrifying, and something everyone should hear. When I first moved into Maivra Elian's house, I told myself I was just overthinking the strange feeling in my chest. You know that tight, uneasy pressure you get when something looks normal on the surface? Yet your instincts whisper that something isn't right. That's exactly how it felt. I tried to brush it off. New house, new environment, new life. Maybe my nerves were just adjusting. But that house had a presence, a weight. As if the walls were holding their breath, watching me more closely than she did. Maivra welcomed me with that soft, delicate smile she always used, the one that could make any man feel chosen. She slid her arms around my waist, pulled me close, and whispered, "Now it finally feels like home." For a moment, I believed it. I believed her. But the warmth didn't last long. The deeper I walked into that place, the colder the air pressed against my skin. Her house was old, but not the charming, antique kind of old. It was the type that creaked even when nobody was moving and stayed cold even when the heater roared. And no matter where I stood, the cold seemed to travel upward from one place, the basement door. It sat at the end of the hallway like a sealed mouth holding secrets it was desperate not to spit out. The first time I stepped near it, Maivra moved faster than I had ever seen her move. She practically leaped across the hallway, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me back with a sudden force that didn't match her calm personality. "Raylan," she said, breath shaky but voice controlled, "just one rule. Stay out of the basement. Promise me." I remember staring at her, at the way her eyes glistened with something I couldn't name. Fear? Guilt? Anger? I didn't know. But I felt it. Something inside her was trembling. I laughed it off, told her, "All right, relax. It's just a door." But deep down, something inside me whispered back, "No, it's the beginning." Didn't take long for the cracks to widen. At first, it was small things, things you could excuse if you were blindly in love, which I guess I was. Maivra had this way of hovering, almost like she wanted to know every detail of my day before I even experienced it. If my phone buzzed, her eyes snapped to it faster than mine. If I stepped outside for fresh air, she'd ask who I talked to, what they said, and why they said it. She'd laugh afterward, pretend it was a joke, but her eyes never matched the laughter. The nights were the worst. I'd wake up to find her standing in the hallway, staring at the basement door, not touching it, not opening it, just standing there with her head slightly tilted as if she was listening. When I'd ask what she was doing, she always gave the same answer, just thinking. But her hands were always shaking. One morning I bumped into our neighbor, old man Cromley. He was the quiet type, but when he spoke, his words carried an unsettling heaviness. He pointed at the house and said no one hears something strange and stays quiet unless they're part of the secret. Don't do what the last guy did. I didn't understand what he meant, at least. Not then. When I told Maivra about the conversation, she snapped so violently it shocked me. Her voice wasn't anxious or nervous. It was sharp, furious, explosive. She shouted that I had no right to talk to people behind her back. She called Cromley a senile old man, said he was obsessed with ruining her life. I tried to calm her down, but she shoved me hard and then slapped me across the face. The sting was nothing compared to the confusion. A few minutes later, she apologized like nothing had happened, hugged me, cried into my chest, told me she was just stressed. But I didn't believe her anymore. Not after the night I heard someone whisper my name from behind the basement door, a whisper that didn't belong to her. It was late, past midnight, when I first heard it, a faint creak, like someone shifting their weight coming from the basement. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze, listening, straining for more. There it was again, that sound soft but deliberate. Someone was down there. I told myself it was impossible. Maivra was asleep. She always slept. At least that's what she wanted me to believe. Curiosity battled with the dread knotting in my stomach. I tiptoed closer to the basement door, trying to keep my breathing steady. The doorknob was cold under my fingers. I tried turning it, locked. Of course it was locked. She had promised me, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, that I would never, ever go in there. And yet the sound teased me, whispered my name. Raylan, Raylan. I stepped back, my pulse hammering. My hands were sweating, but I couldn't leave it. I could feel that something was hiding, just beyond the thin wood, just behind that locked door. Every instinct screamed at me to run, yet I stayed. I didn't know if it was courage or foolishness. Then came the knock. Not on the door of the basement itself, a soft, rhythmic tapping, and that whisper again. Clear, deliberate, impossibly close. Ray. Len. My blood ran cold. It wasn't her. It wasn't her voice. And yet it sounded human, alive. I wanted to call out, to demand an answer, but my throat refused to work. My legs threatened to give out. And then I heard her footsteps behind me. Maivra appeared in the hallway, eyes wide, chest rising and falling like she had just run a marathon. Her hands gripped my shoulders, steadying me, or maybe warning me. Raylan, she whispered, her voice soft, almost sweet. I told you. Don't. Just stay out. Her calmness was terrifying. There was no apology, no explanation, just that rule. Stay out. And she glared at me, an almost imperceptible tremor in her lip, something I couldn't quite place. Fear, anger, or something darker. That night I realized the basement wasn't just a room. It was a warning, secret, something she had sworn I would never see. And for the first time, I understood whatever waited behind that door. It was mine to discover whether she wanted me to or not. It started with a drawer. I didn't plan on looking inside it, not really. But curiosity, that relentless, gnawing curiosity, got the better of me. I opened it slowly, almost apologetically, like I was trespassing in sacred territory. What I found made my stomach twist and my hands freeze midair. Receipts. Dozens of receipts. Heavy-duty chains, soundproofing foam, and freezers. Large freezers. My mind refused to connect the dots at first. I stared at the papers, heart racing, trying to convince myself it was some mundane obsession I didn't understand. But the pieces didn't fit. They couldn't. I confronted Maivra that evening, holding the papers like a torch burning between us. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't beg. Instead, she looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes and laughed. A short, sharp laugh that cut deeper than any knife. Raylan, she said, voice smooth, too smooth. You're reading things you don't understand. You always do this, jumping to conclusions, imagining horrors. I felt the anger rise, hot and immediate, but beneath it, a trembling fear. I don't need to imagine anything, I said, voice tight. These aren't just bills. Chains, soundproofing, freezers. What is all this? She tilted her head, feigning confusion, and suddenly the calmness snapped like brittle glass. Her shouting came fast, furious, uncontrollable. She screamed that I had no right to question her, that I was paranoid, that I was imagining threats that didn't exist. She called me selfish, intrusive, and threatened to pack my things if I ever doubted her again. In the middle of her tirade, she shoved me hard enough to make me stumble, and then slapped me across the face, her hand burning like fire against my cheek. Pain, shock, disbelief, all of it collided in a storm inside me. And then, just like that, she stepped back, smiled weakly, and wrapped her arms around me. She whispered apologies, pressed her lips to my forehead, and muttered about stress, about how overwhelmed she had been. I wanted to believe her. I tried. I so badly wanted to believe that this was just a mistake, just a moment of anger. But deep down, something in me knew the truth. Maivra was hiding something far darker. Something she never intended me to see. And I also knew, in that moment, that I couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. The basement wasn't just a door anymore. It was a promise, a challenge, a warning I couldn't walk away from. The night Maivra left for her business trip was the first time I felt true freedom in that house. It was strange, almost dizzying, to move through the hallways without her watchful eyes, without her words slicing at my thoughts. Yet even in that silence, the house felt alive. The basement door loomed at the end of the hallway like a dark promise calling to me. I kept telling myself to ignore it, to stay rational, to be careful. But every instinct screamed the opposite. I paced for what felt like hours, the whispers from earlier still echoing in my mind. Raylan, Raylan. My pulse throbbed with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The receipts, the chains, the freezers, her explosive reactions, all of it pointed to something unspeakable. And now, finally, the door wasn't locked. My stomach churned when I realized she must have left it unlocked, intentionally or by mistake. Either way, the opportunity was here. I gripped the doorknob, hands trembling, heart hammering so loudly I was sure she could hear it from miles away. For a moment, I considered turning back. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was dangerous. Maybe she wasn't lying. Maybe I'd walk into something I couldn't escape, but I couldn't stop. Something deep inside me, a mix of dread and instinct, told me that the truth, the real truth, was behind that door. I pushed it open slowly, the hinges groaning like a warning. Darkness swallowed me, cold and heavy, pressing against my skin. Each step down the stairs was deliberate, careful, yet impossible to stop. The air smelled faintly metallic, sharp, and the whispering grew louder in my mind, if not in reality. I wasn't sure if it was fear or intuition guiding me. At the bottom, I froze. The basement was more than a room. It was a chamber of secrets, of obsession. I didn't know what I'd find, but in that moment, I understood something vital. Karma had started its work. Whatever Maivra had been building, whatever plan she had, was about to collide with the one thing she hadn't counted on me. And for the first time, I realized the power of truth. It doesn't knock politely. It doesn't wait. It comes crashing in, demanding reckoning. This was it. The moment where everything changed. The moment I stepped into the basement, the air hit me like a physical force, cold, metallic, and unbearably heavy. My flashlight flickered across the walls, revealing something that made my blood run ice cold. Chains hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly as if someone had just been released. The faint smell of bleach and something far fouler clung to the air. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my shaking hands, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But every instinct told me otherwise. I moved deeper, heart pounding, eyes darting. And then I saw it. Photos, hundreds of them, pinned to the walls with red circles around faces, names scribbled underneath. Faces I recognized, faces I didn't. Names that felt like a warning. My stomach twisted as I scanned the room. On a table sat personal items, my toothbrush, my hair tied neatly with twine, receipts from my old purchases. It was like she had been keeping tabs on me, every small detail, as if preparing for something I couldn't yet imagine. And then I saw the cage. My heart stopped. Inside, barely alive, was a man, his eyes wide with fear and recognition. He whispered my name, hoarse and trembling. Raylan. She said you'd come. Don't. Stay safe. I staggered back, the flashlight shaking in my hands. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. Maivra didn't just control me. She had done this before. She collected people, trapped them, replaced them. My pulse raced, a sick mix of terror and rage, and then I noticed the journal, titled 4. His replacement, it lay open, pages filled with obsessive notes, plans, dates, all about me. Every detail of my life, every habit, every weakness, meticulously documented. She had planned this for months, maybe years. The whispering grew louder in my mind, echoing against the walls. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. Part of me wanted to stay, to confront her, to make her see the horror she had created. Another part knew survival depended on escaping and exposing her. For the first time, the house felt alive with something far darker than creaking floors. It wasn't just her secret anymore. It was the reckoning she had built. And now, it was mine to unleash. I hadn't even processed everything when I heard the creak of the stairs above. My heart slammed against my ribcage. She was back. Maivra, she hadn't been gone at all, or she had returned early. Either way, the weight of her presence hit me like a fist. I turned slowly, flashlight trembling, and met her eyes. The same calm smile, but now it held something feral, dangerous. "Raylan," she whispered, voice soft but sharp, cutting through the silence. "I told you, never come down here." To demand answers, but my mouth went dry. She advanced slowly, deliberate, like a predator circling prey. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs felt rooted to the cold concrete floor. The man in the cage shivered, barely holding on to consciousness, his eyes pleading with me to act fast. She lunged suddenly, grabbing a metal tool from the table, swinging it with precision. My hand shot up, barely deflecting the blow, the clang echoing off the walls. The force of it pushed me back, adrenaline igniting every nerve. Rage and fear collided in my chest. This was her world, her control, her obsession. But I wasn't going to be part of it. Not me. I shoved her hard, the impact sending her stumbling backward. Her shoulder hit the cage's corner with a sickening crack, and she yelped. That sound, half scream, half rage, made my blood run hotter. She scrambled to her feet, eyes wild now, no longer the composed mask I had seen before. "You ruined everything," she screamed. "I could have had it all, you." And that's when the anger overtook fear. I grabbed her arm, twisted her wrist, forcing her down. My voice was steady, sharp, controlled. "No, this ends now." The power dynamic had flipped. I wasn't just a victim anymore, I was the reckoning. The man in the cage began to move, weak but alive, finding courage in my defiance. Together, we forced her back, holding her long enough to get out of immediate danger. Her screams echoed through the basement, echoing off the walls, but they were empty. The moment had shifted, the predator had met the storm. For the first time, I realized betrayal isn't just about being lied to. It's about reclaiming power from the person who thought they could control everything. We didn't waste a second. The basement's shadows pressed against us like a living thing, but adrenaline sharpened every nerve. I guided the man Elwyn, as he whispered between shaky breaths, toward the stairs. Every step felt like climbing out of a nightmare I had no right to survive. Yet here I was, finally taking control. Maivra's screams ricocheted behind us, furious and unhinged, but they only fueled my resolve. Karma was already in motion. Once we burst through the front door, the cold night air felt like a lifeline. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, and dialed the police. Her shrieks carried into the quiet neighborhood, drawing curious eyes from windows. But I didn't falter. I gave every detail I could: chains, the cage, her obsessions, the receipts, the journal. Each word was a hammer striking down the empire of lies she had built. By the time the police arrived, Maivra was in full panic mode, trying to weave a story of misunderstanding, of an innocent night gone wrong. But the evidence, the freezer, the chains, the meticulous journals, the terrified man she had imprisoned spoke louder than any lie she could concoct. Karma was patient, but precise. Her web of control spun for months, crumbled in hours. The neighbors whispered, the officers exchanged glances. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of fear begin to lift. Maivra's carefully crafted persona of control and dominance had been stripped bare. And the look on her face as she was led away in handcuffs, disbelief, fury, desperation, it was the only closure I needed. Every warning, every instinct, every doubt had been validated. Later, as I sat with Elwyn, letting him recover and assuring him he was safe, the enormity of what had happened hit me. This wasn't just escape. It wasn't just survival. It was the natural course of karma. Maivra had built a prison not just for others, but for herself. And when the walls collapsed, there was no one to protect her. I realized then that betrayal can cut deep, but revenge, true revenge, doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes all it takes is truth, action, and letting karma do what it does best. The house was silent now, but the echoes of justice lingered, louder than any fear had ever been. The days after Maivra's arrest felt surreal. Walking through the house, I noticed how quiet it was, almost peaceful. Yet every corner, every creaking floorboard reminded me of what had happened. I couldn't erase the memories, nor did I want to. They were proof that survival isn't just about escaping danger. It's about facing it and taking control when fear threatens to consume you. Elwyn recovered slowly, but each day he grew stronger, and with that strength came gratitude. He didn't need me to be a hero, and I didn't want to be one. All I did was act. I made choices when hesitation would have destroyed us. Sitting with him, sharing stories of how we had survived, I realized the magnitude of what betrayal can do, not just to the body, but to the mind, the trust, the very core of who you are. I spent hours reflecting on Maivra, on the person I thought I knew, the woman who smiled softly, who whispered promises, who seemed loving and gentle. She had been hiding a darkness so meticulous, so obsessive, that it could have destroyed anyone who got too close. And yet in the chaos, Karma had a way of balancing the scales. She was trapped by her own design, and in her downfall, I found clarity. It wasn't vengeance that gave me peace. It was truth. Watching her consequences unfold, knowing justice was served, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Survival, I realized, isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's about reclaiming your power from someone who thought they could take it. I also learned to trust my instincts. That first uneasy feeling in the house, the whispers, the cold of the basement, they were warnings I'd almost ignored. Listening to them saved not just me, but another life. Now when I walk past the basement door, I don't feel fear. I feel perspective. I feel strength. The house still stands, but it no longer holds terror. It holds a lesson. Betrayal can cut deep, but facing it, confronting it, and letting the truth prevail is the ultimate form of liberation. Karma didn't just strike Maivra, it reminded me that courage and action can restore balance, even in the darkest of places. And for the first time in weeks, I finally breathed.